Learning how to preserve yourself and creating your personal boundaries allows you to tend to your spiritual and physical garden. When you are rigid in your movement, your creative energy can become stagnant, similar to a pond. However, if you are too disassociated from your emotions and sense of self, then your boundaries can be taken advantage of, and it's as if your internal waters resemble a rushing river, taking almost anything in its path. Yet, if we can establish our ability to say no and step into our power of personal likes and dislikes, then you give yourself the greatest gift of all: self-preservation, vitality, and a creative way to approach your life. Let's talk about the architecture of the pelvis. The pelvis is formed by 4 bones, including a pair of 2 hip bones, sacrum, and coccyx. The pelvic girdle contains the hip bones and the sacrum, and its function is to transmit the weight in the upper body to the lower limbs, while also allowing the body to stay balanced. The coccyx has 4 fused vertebrae, and the structure of the pelvis is designed to give females the ability to birth, while giving males the ability to hold larger and heavier muscles upon their frame. Therefore, it is heavier in men and has more muscle attachments. Due to the amount of sitting that we do, the muscles around the pelvis and the lower back become tight, strained, overworked, and underused. As we perform these following exercises, talk to the deepest part of the hip joint and get the rotation to be smooth and pure without any compensation. By understanding the structure of the pelvis, we can pay attention to the way we walk, sit, and stand to avoid injury and repetitive movements that cause arthritis and immobility in the hips. Begin by placing your feet directly underneath you in a standing position. Make sure that your feet are comfortable to hold the entire frame of your body, resting in a position that is easy and effortless, but also stable and grounded. Now tuck your chin down into your chest, keeping all of the body active. Rotate your head to one side. Rotate your chin back down to center and transition to the other side. Complete half circles at your own pace. Rotate your head from side to side, alleviating any stress or tension through your neck and your shoulders. Gradually begin to form larger circles so that you complete an entire circle with your head. Notice that as you drop your head back behind you, could you avoid compressing your vertebrae and instead keep the back of your neck long as you complete full circles in both directions. Release and return to center. Cross your arms in front of your chest and place your hands onto opposite shoulders. You may have to adjust your feet wider to support this next movement. Keep your hips and the lower half of your body still, grounded and solid, and then rotate the upper part of your body around the axis of your pelvis. Draw circles to your comfort, to your edge, with your torso in space. Complete 5 rounds on both sides before returning back to center. Take your time. Try not to force any part of this movement, but rather, can you create smooth, even movements? Return to center. Place your hands onto your sacrum, right at the base of your spine. where your hips meet your back. Press your hips forward to their full capacity and then rotate to one side and back like you're drawing a big circle with your hips. Rotate in one direction for 5 rounds or so. Feel your edge. You may have to bend your knees. You may have to straighten your legs. You may have to bend one knee while straightening another. Adapt and adjust the pose so that you reach your full range of motion in your pelvis. Note that as you bring your hips forward, it's important to lengthen out of your lower lumbar spine, your lower back, rather than collapsing into the vertebrae, causing constriction and tightness. After 5 rounds, rotate in the opposite direction. Notice if you come across any pinching, clicking, or areas where you may not be able to access. Are both sides similar or are they slightly different? Take note of that in your mental journal and store it for later. Plant your hands down onto the floor and step back into a tabletop position. Place your palms directly under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. Create a strong, firm, grounded foundation. Lift the left leg up off of the ground. Hug the left knee towards the left elbow, or maybe even reach it higher up onto the arm towards the armpit. Hold here, keep your elbows straight, and try not to compromise by leaning to one side. Lift the leg as high as comfortable without compromising the position. And then open your leg up to the side for hip abduction. Internally rotate the thigh and point the outer ankle bone forward. Lift the leg back behind you so that you reach your full range of motion in your hip joint. You can extend the leg. And then once again, bend the knee. Imagine you're holding a tennis ball behind your left knee. Keep the hamstring flexed and rotate your leg back around to center. Continue at your own pace many times. Again, try to find your edge without force, but with a sense of grace and ease. If there's any pinching, clicking, it's a sign that you've gone too far. So take a step back, listen and honor your body, learning the language, and give yourself exactly what you need in this moment. In your own time, release the left knee down and switch out the sides. Hug the right knee towards the right elbow. Option to lift it even higher towards the armpit. Then flex the leg out away from you like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. Point the knee down, reach the outer ankle forward and up. Circle the hip and the femur bone, the upper leg bone in the hip socket. Press the leg back behind you, reach into full extension of the leg. And then bend the knee, hold the invisible tennis ball behind your kneecap. Circle the knee out, around, and return back to center. Complete a few more rounds on this side. Step one foot forward so that you come into a lunge. Place the pillow or a blanket underneath your back knee so that there is support under the kneecap. Low lunge. Press your right foot down and energetically reach your right shin forward as if I was standing in front of you holding your shin. Try to resist my pull as I pulled your shin away from you. Then, press your left shin down into the floor to help guide your left hip forward, creating a strong foundation. You should feel a lot of work happening in your lower half. Flex your back glute. Guide the tailbone, the coccyx, to point down and even slightly forward so that the intensity of this stretch is felt in the front hip. This is an excellent stretch for your quadriceps, for your hip flexors, your psoas, all of the muscles that allow you to sit and walk. And please place your hands down onto the ground. Take your front leg back into a tabletop position. Now, please step your opposite foot forward into your lunge. Press your front foot down and back, contracting the hamstring. Identify your back leg, flex the glute of your back leg, and press your back shin down and forward as though you were trying to drag it forward underneath you. Stay here for a few breaths, deepening the stretch into the front of your leg. Place your hands down onto the ground and step your front foot back into your tabletop. Sit your hips back to your heels and off to the side, extending your legs forward. Seated figure 4. Place your hands back behind you. Bend your knees and then place your right ankle on top of the left thigh. Flex the right foot so that you feel a stretch in the outside of your right glute, maybe even your outer leg and into your piriformis, which connects your sacrum to your upper leg bone. Notice if you start to round your back, can you keep your spine elongated? Elevate the chest towards the shin and energize your shin towards your chest. Stay here if you feel this stretch, or if you'd like a different sensation, straighten your left leg forward. Basket your shin into your hands like you're holding a baby. Our last option here is to build some strength in the hip. So you're going to take your hands off of the right leg and float the shin in space. See if you can maintain a magnetized sensation between your shin and your chest as though they were pulling together. Continue to lift through your chest and your breastbone. Elevate out of your lower back. 3, 2, and 1. Slowly release. Extend your right leg forward. Switch sides. Bend your knees. Lift your left leg. Place the outside of your left ankle on top of your right thigh. Figure 4. If on the other side you basketed your leg into your hands, explore on this side the same variation. As you float the leg in space, can you continue to press down through the parts of your body touching the floor to help lift your leg a little bit higher? Stabilize and hold. Gently release your left leg back down. Lie down onto your back and roll to the right side of your body. Align your body parallel to the floor as you stack your hips and your ankles one on top of the other. Then bend your knees to a 90-degree angle. Bring the knees forward in line with your hips. Just like we did in tabletop, lift the left leg up towards the chest. Elevate the leg as far away from the midline of your body. Internally rotate your upper leg bone so the knee points down and your left outer ankle reaches forward and up. Then circle at your hip joint, your left leg back and around behind you. Reverse the motion, hold the tennis ball behind your leg, and gradually press your leg up, forward, and around back to your chest, and then to your home position, knee to knee. Practice a few more rounds. Find your full range of motion. Release your left leg down, straighten your legs, roll to your back, and transition to the other side. Stack your knees one on top of the other in line with your hips at a 90-degree angle. Hug your right knee this time into your chest. Reach and elevate the leg, abduct it from the body. Internally rotate, press the outer ankle forward and away from you. Circle in the hip joint and press the leg back behind you. Just like you did on the other side, find a couple of rounds, finding your range of motion, playing with your edge, but not pushing too far to the point of pain or pinching or clicking. Once you feel complete on this side, gently release. Now roll onto your belly. Rest your body on the floor with your arms either by your side with your head in one direction, or you can stack your palms and rest your face on your hands. Now listen carefully, keeping your legs rested and on the ground. Take your left leg and start to point the knee out to the left. Keep the leg on the ground, the inner thigh and the shin bone touching the floor. Bend the knee and guide the knee out to the left in line with your left hip. Keep your entire leg resting on the ground, even your shin and your ankle bone. You can flex the foot here in line with your left knee. Half floor frog. This is a wonderful passive stretch to open the groin, the inner thighs, and to bring some awareness into the muscles and the quality of those muscles within the inner thigh area. Bend the knee slightly and extend your left leg back behind you. Switch sides. If you're gazing in one direction, look in the opposite direction. Keep your right leg this time entirely relaxed on the ground. Bend your right knee to the right. Align the knee with the hip, the ankle with the knee. Half floor frog. Slowly release your right leg back behind you. Place your palms underneath your shoulders. Press up onto your hands and knees. Sit the hips to one side and bring your legs forward. Come to lying down on your back. Part 2. Lay down on your back on the floor. If you need comfort, at any time during this session, you can bend your knees and stand your feet when resting. Today's lesson is about the fundamental relationship between the pelvis and the head and the whole self. Take a moment to sense and feel your contact with the ground without any judgment. Try not to fix or change anything. Sense how the one leg lies, its length, where the heavy parts in the leg are, and the lifted parts. And compare it to the sensations of the other leg. Feel how your legs connect to your pelvis at your hip joints. Can you imagine the shape of those hip joints? Does the pelvis rest flat and simple on the floor like a book? Or when you examine closely the pressure that it makes on the floor, do you feel that the weight is shifted towards one side? Or perhaps the tail? Or the lower back spine? Feel around the region of the lower back. Notice if this is a comfortable area in your body. Is the arch in your lower back the same on both sides? Or if you examine the feeling of the musculature in the body, do you notice a slight difference? The muscles tend to create an arch, and is it the same on both sides? What kind of bridge does the lower back arch make away from the ground? Can you feel how the ribs rest, the shoulders? How does your head rest? Which part of your head takes the support of the floor? Is it at the center or off to one side? How does that inclination of the head resting angle your face to point in a direction? Notice the length and shape of the arch behind your neck, the cervical neck. Compare it to the arch of your lumbar spine, your lower back. Notice which is longer, which is taller from the floor. Notice how the breath comes and goes, without worrying about how you should or shouldn't breathe. Are there sensations of volume, pressure, coolness? What's the rate of your breath? What aspect of the breath gives you pleasure? And which feels restrictive? Bend your knees and bring the soles of your feet to stand on the ground. Have your feet the width of your hips. Leave your arms on the floor by your side. Begin to slightly increase the arch of your lower back so your pelvis rolls down towards your heels. Then slowly let it go. If you have any history of lower back strain, will you do this movement very small? You're welcome to use as much of your spine to arch your lower back as you want to. All you are doing is increasing the arch of your lower back, so as if a little mouse could scurry underneath you. When you do this, feel what happens in the hip joint. You might even feel the feet on the floor gently pull to help you. Can you make several more movements with a clear pause in between while also attending to the breath? Let that go, please, and lengthen your legs and rest. Notice if that was uncomfortable for you, if you did some extra work. See if you have begun to influence the relationship between the ground and your back. Then bend your knees and stand your feet. Imagine you have a clock painted on the back of your pelvis. The 6 o'clock mark is tilting the pelvis forward, and the 12 o'clock is tilting the pelvis backwards. 3 o'clock is to the right hip, and 9 o'clock is to the left hip. Make a couple of movements in the pelvis, resting at the middle point. Guide the pelvis towards 6 o'clock. And then let the pelvis tilt back to center. A couple of times from the center to 6 o'clock and back to center. From the middle resting place, find 12 o'clock. Flatten the back, increase the pressure in the feet, and push part of your pelvis painted with 12 into the floor. Then lightly let it go and return to the middle. Try that a few times. Roll the weight of your pelvis to 12 o'clock and let the pelvis tilt back to center. Then lightly let it go and return to the middle. Begin to roll between 12 and 6 o'clock many times. Be clear on the lines being straight and comfortable as you can make it. Be clear on the lines being straight and as comfortable as you can make it. Could you let the breathing come very freely, even if you make the movement smaller? Make the movement very smooth and the ongoing independent breath very smooth. See if you can separate the breath from the movement so that they move independently. Could you observe what your head does in relation to the rocking of your pelvis? And rest, lengthen the legs forward. Imagine you had a smaller clock dial painted on the back of the head. Could you reflect how the head might move in relation to the pelvis? Please bend your knees and stand your feet. Begin to rock the pelvis between 12 and 6 o'clock, just like you did before. Be clear when the pelvis is touching the 12 right at the base of the spine, and 6 right at the tailbone. Observe what your head is doing. Can you find a similar, smaller 12 and 6 movement? If not, rest in the middle. Take a deep breath in, hold the breath, roll your pelvis, and see if that moves the head. Then breathe regularly. And let it go and lengthen the legs. Picture very vividly the clock painted on your backside pelvis. Think of the length and the distance between the 12 and 6 o'clock. Where would that put the 3 and the 9 o'clock? When you're ready, bend your knees, stand your feet, experiment with the way to rock the 3 o'clock, the right side heavy, and keep the weight there for a moment. And what do you hold in your muscle expression to keep the clock heavy? Since the clock is painted on you, 3 o'clock is to your right. And rest and come back to the middle. A couple of times, what do you need to do to get the weight over to 3 o'clock? Not to 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock, just to 3. What do you feel in the pressure under your feet? Is it possible when you are at 3 o'clock that you have an increase of pressure in one foot and a decreased pressure in the other? Come back to the middle and try 9 o'clock. Quietly from the middle, roll the pelvis to find the weight at 9 o'clock. You're not lifting the weight of the pelvis, you're rolling the weight. And wherever you are, can you breathe? Now start to go ahead and connect the clock between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Create a smooth, clear path of pressure directly across the middle of your clock between 3 and 9 many times. Reduce the range a little bit and come into more awareness of what the rest of yourself does. Do the ribs come along for the ride, or do they tend to want to brace or anchor things? Keep the knees more or less facing the ceiling. For some people, this is a real interruption of the solution they found. Many people sway the knees, which is a natural solution to the movement riddle. But can you find another way to roll the pelvis? The knees don't have to be rigid. They, in fact, do have a three-dimensional movement in space. But can you guide the movement from your pelvis rather than steering it with your knees? Lengthen your legs and take a rest. See how you have influenced yourself. Is there anything different about the pelvis and lower back? The legs? The chest? The chest that's different? Bend your knees and stand your feet again. Make a few more 3 and 9 movements. Keep the breathing light and free and, if you will, independent of the shifting hips. See if you can get soft enough to observe where the head moves. Does it move in correlation with the pelvis? Now rest in the middle with your knees bent and feet standing. Picture the hour of your clock. Can you draw in your mind's eye across the back of your pelvis the number 1, 2, 3, up to 6 o'clock with your mind? Now, would you please roll your pelvis to 12 o'clock? Minimize the effort so that this is now your home base. Then around the circumference, many times a little arch from 12 to 1 o'clock. Would you roll your pelvis to 12 o'clock? Minimize the effort so that this is now your home base. Then, around the circumference, can you roll from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock? Many times, a little arch from 1 to 12, 12 to 1. It's not a straight line, it's a rounded arch. Now let's go 12 to 1 to 2, and then back to 1 and 12 so that you have added an hour. Can you feel movement in the rest of yourself? Now add 3 o'clock, inscribing a quarter circle with a smooth movement without any rigidity, not like the ticking of a clock, but seemingly smooth. Now add an hour, go 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Notice the little additions to the movement. Can the knees be more or less towards the ceiling? Now add 5 o'clock to the 12 along the right side. If you feel any fatigue building, take a break. And connect the half circle all the way around to 6 o'clock, and then counterclockwise everything on the right side of the clock, 12 to 6 and 6 to 12. Continue several more times and sense your head and invite your head to participate on its own smaller clock. Let this go. Lengthen your legs and rest. How do you meet the floor now? Bend your knees and stand your feet. Breathe quietly and find your way to press 12 o'clock into the floor, lightly and sustainably. Begin the same process counterclockwise. Would you please arch from 12 o'clock to 11 and back to 12? About 5 times or so. Add an hour. See if you can maintain roundedness rather than straight lines. Are there any parts of you that would be more softer and more effortless? Is there any expression in the ribs and shoulders that you could let go of? And as you get towards the whole half of the circle on the left side, move slowly and notice when each number of the clock is pressed into the ground. Are you able to press all the numbers on the left side of the clock, 12, 11, 10, all the way to 6? Lengthen your legs and rest. Let go of any expectation and simply notice if the support of the floor has changed. Bend your knees and stand your feet. Rest quietly for a moment. Could you roll your pelvis to 3 o'clock and stay there, relating to it as a home position? You're staying at 3 o'clock, but there is a minimal effort to stay there. From 3 o'clock, quietly arch between 2 and 4 on the right side. Check and see if that is actually a round shape. Can you feel the head in its round shape? The weight under the feet and something in the chest. Add an hour to either end of that roll, back and forth between 1 and 5 o'clock. Is it possible to keep the knees quiet? They will move a little, but not entirely shift to the side. Do you find in this exploration that the head is moving a little, or is there something interfering? Now expand between 3, 2, 1, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. By starting from 3 o'clock, I wonder if you could see or feel or think yourself a little differently. Let it go and lengthen the legs for a moment and rest. Can you feel in the immediate moments after the exercise some kind of sensation that tells you you are going to the right? Bend your knees and stand your feet. Make 9 o'clock a home position. Learn to stay there while breathing, the head free and the chest free. Could you quietly begin to expand from 9 to 10, from 9 to 8? Once again, finding roundedness rather than straight lines. Add an hour to include 11 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Then add 12 and 6 on the entire left side and be precise in your awareness that you are in the middle at 12 and 6. You could even pause and check. Arch all the way around the left side, noting the hours as you gradually move past each one. Take your time with yourself. Let it go and lengthen your legs and rest. Bend your knees and stand your feet. Rest for a moment and find your breath. Press 12 o'clock into the ground. Think of which way is clockwise and begin to roll clockwise around your circle from 1, 2, 3, all the way around 6, 8, back to 12 many times. Be more interested in the clarity and smoothness than speed and size. This is a great opportunity to use the muscles in your hips with far greater accuracy than on a day-to-day basis. Now, as you get comfortable and accurate with this, bring your attention to your whole self. Can you continue breathing easy at all parts of the circle? Can you be a little more comfortable somewhere in the chest and neck, the shoulders and arms? And what does your head do? Can you follow your head around its clock for a couple of clockwise circles? Could you play with putting your head in the driver's seat, rolling around its own clock, marking off each hour, letting the resonance of the skeleton come from the intention to move the head, passing down your whole self, your spine, chest, and finally reaching the pelvis. Could you make the whole thing get a little lighter and faster, somewhat careless? Let it rest. Lengthen your legs. And when you feel refreshed, bend the knees, stand the feet, and go counterclockwise from 12, 11, 10, 9, all the way around back to 12. And once again, getting comfortable and accurate with this, bring your attention to what the rest of your body, including your head, is doing. When you feel like both sides are complete, release and lengthen your legs. And sense the parts of your body that are heavily resting on the ground. And can you notice the parts of your body that are lifted from the floor? Notice if your back and the relationship to the earth has changed since the first time you've practiced this today. This month's affirmation: I deserve pleasure in my life. I embrace and celebrate my sexuality. My sexuality is sacred. I move easily and effortlessly. And stretch your arms over your head. Eventually roll onto one side of your body and rise up to a seated position. Make your way up to standing so that you can integrate this practice into something that you do daily. Walk around your space, and can you bring your attention to the clock and notice, how does the clock move as you walk? Throughout these next few weeks, I encourage you to observe your pelvis as you walk, sit, and stand with a little bit more awareness, hopefully from these exercises. Thank you.